Welcome back, guys. Or if you're new to my channel, this is Automotive Anonymous, and that's a 2025 Subaru Outback. But more specifically, it's the Wilderness, which is maybe the most popular and coolest trim level of all the Outbacks. And it's in a color that Subaru likes to call autumn green metallic, which in person looks really good. It's quite shiny and sparkly, and it actually fits the Outback nameplate really well. And if you are new to this channel, I own an Outback Wilderness. I have for almost 3 years, so this is a full review from someone who's actually an owner of one of these. So I'm going to share the good, the bad, and the ugly of this current generation Outback Wilderness to help you guys at home decide if it might be worth your time and money. So you can expect to see a walk around, all the specs, initial driving impressions, 0 to 60 on GPS, and then my final thoughts. And huge thanks to the Twin Falls Subaru for letting me borrow theirs today. I'll link it below if you're interested. They sell below MSRP and they ship all over the country. And with that said, let's dive right in with this review. And if you guys like Subaru, the 2025 Subaru Outback Wilderness, or my video, please consider liking my video. That small act of kindness, it really goes a long way. It helps me know you want to see more stuff like this, but it will also help you by having YouTube choose to show you more stuff like this that you maybe didn't know already existed. But if you're new to the Subaru Outback, you really need to know that these first came out back in 1995, and they're based off of the Subaru Legacy sedan, which is one generation ahead of this. The same front end of this is what the Legacy sedan is, but it's been extended, it's been raised, and the whole thing's been lifted in this trim level. 9.5 inches of ground clearance is what you get, but these are really popular, especially in the North American market where they sell 140 to 180,000 units every single year. They are assembled in Lafayette, Indiana, so they're not one of the Subaru models that are assembled in Japan and shipped overseas, but they still seem to have really good quality control. A lot of people seem to like their Outbacks. Heck, there's a reason why I own one and why I still have owned one almost 3 years later. But you also need to know that this is the last year of the current generation, and then it's been rumored that the next gen, the 7th generation, is more than just a refresh. It's a complete redesign. And Subaru's ditching the Subaru Legacy sedan, and in its place, I sure hope that they bring out the Baja truck like they had about 20 years ago. Just a side note about the Baja, I think it came out before its time because off-road vehicles were not nearly as popular in the early 2000s as they are right now, but it was kind of weird because the Outback is based off a sedan, and then the Baja is based off of the Outback, which is based off of the sedan, so it's kind of a weird mini truck, sedan, car, wagon thing, and it had a lot of interesting personality and key features that distinguished it from a lot of other vehicles. But in recent years, the Ford Maverick has come out, the Hyundai Santa Cruz. Off-road vehicles have just exploded in popularity in recent years. Heck, I think the Baja was kind of like the FJ Cruiser that really didn't sell very well. And ultimately, I think it was just revolutionary. I think it was before its time, and Subaru had some intuition that the rest of us did not have back then. It was kind of like rock and roll in the Back to the Future movie, where the people just weren't ready for it, even though it was a pretty darn cool thing. But ultimately, if you are someone who's contemplating purchasing the Wilderness trim level, there's a few things that you need to know about the pricing and the options that you're going to be getting. First of all, the base model Outback, which is the lowest of the 9 trim levels, starts at around $30,000 before destination delivery. This one starts at about $40,000. So after destination delivery, the extra options that you might want on yours, this one actually MSRPs for a little bit over $44,000 before Twin Falls Subaru discounted it by almost $1,000 right off the bat. So you are going to be paying a pretty penny. In fact, the Wilderness is the 7th highest of the 9 trim levels, falling short only to the Limited XT and the Touring XT. But if you are going to purchase the Wilderness, what do you get? Well, you get a full-size spare tire. You get a big turbo engine that makes a lot of power. You get a more aggressive final drive ratio for putting the power down. You get Geolandar all-terrain tires. You get its own unique wheel, which I personally really like on my own. Of course, there's copper accents all throughout on every corner, redesigned front and rear bumpers, 700-pound static rating for the roof rails. And if there's anything else I missed, I'll post it on the screen. Oh yeah, StarTech seats. Those are comfortable and they've held up really well in my own example. But there is one substantial thing that is missing from this Wilderness trim level, and one thing that you can easily fix. You'll notice right here, the front, it's not tinted. It's very light. There's a lot of light coming in, which if your eyes are sensitive, you might not like that. Or if you want to avoid extra UV rays, if you want to have a little bit more privacy, or if you just want your vehicle to look better and have the front match the rear, you might want to consider window tint. And if you are considering window tint and you're anywhere near southern Idaho, I highly recommend you reach out to the Tint Lady for any of your residential or automobile needs. I've personally taken 5 vehicles to her now, and trust me, I've gone other places and I have not been satisfied with her work. It's fast, it's efficient, and it's affordable. Heck, if you even mention that you heard about her in one of my videos, she'll give you a discount. But anytime that I've come into town and I visited her and waited in her waiting room, which is comfortable by the way, I don't think I've ever had to wait for more than maybe 30 or 35 minutes for her and her team to get the job done. And while you're waiting, you learn a lot. You can see the difference that the tint that's being applied makes. It's a very interactive, educational experience, and I have nothing but the highest regards to share. I've had no follow-up concerns, I've had no follow-up issues, so for that reason, I'm gonna link all of her information below, and check her out. She's worth your business. But because these wildernesses are so cool and so equipped right out of the box, the only other mod I did other than the Tint Lady's window tint on the front windows is I did install a 20-inch LED light bar down there in the lower grille. It's white and it's amber. It's pretty cool. I have the switch hidden where my fuse box control panel is, and I really like it. If you guys are interested in anything like that, I do have a 20% discount code, so I'll link it below. The code is anonymous. The website is Novsight, and they do good business too. But this autumn green metallic wagon, which is almost just blending into the shrubbery over here, is really well sized, so it's easy to drive around town or stable enough and does well enough on the highway. It's roughly 16 feet long. The wheelbase is about 9 feet, so it is pretty planted. They're roughly 5.5 feet tall, about 6 feet wide, and it weighs 3,900 pounds, which just adds to why this feels so stable on the road. The payload capacity, like most four-door Subarus, is 900 pounds, so you can carry 900 pounds worth of people or stuff in your Outback. A regular one has 8.7 inches of ground clearance, but the Wilderness has 9.5. It also has a very aggressive 444 final drive ratio, so this one is actually pretty quick off the line for accelerating, and you still can get decent MPG, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And then it can do a full circle in about 36 feet, and it can tow 3,500 pounds. There's just 3 more things to mention on here, but before we do, you can see that the trees are blowing around. There's quite a bit of wind today. So you guys who have been watching my channel for a long time, please comment below what you think of the audio quality. I've been using a much higher quality microphone for a few of the most recent videos, so let me know what you think. Otherwise, the gas door, it's located right there on the passenger side. When you lock the vehicle, the gas door locks, so none of those bums are going to be siphoning your 18.5 gallons of gas. And this turbo engine, thankfully, is tuned to run on 87. And I've heard people have dynoed it with 87 and 91 octane, and it doesn't really do any better with 91 octane. So that's cool that it's actually tuned for 87 octane, but it gets 21 city, 26 highway. So your max road trip and range is in the ballpark of 481 miles. Otherwise, the wheels and the tires, it's a Yokohama Geolander. They've held up really well on mine. Even at 40,000 miles, I still have them, and mine started at almost 12-30 seconds of tread depth. But it's a 225, 65, 17, so I like that you do get quite a bit of sidewall and fairly aggressive tread for being an off-road tire. But honestly, it does a really good job on road, and it is Snowflake Mountain Peak rated, which can be seen right here. Sorry that took so long, guys. Otherwise, this is your key. You have remote start, and you can change the temperature and some of those settings, lock and unlock the doors if you pay for the My Subaru app. But otherwise, you have lock, unlock, power liftgate, panic button, but honestly, just leave that in your pocket because you have proximity key features right there to lock and to unlock the vehicle. That is kind of slow on Subarus. There we go. Driver's side door panel is completely unchanged over the last 4 years now of Outback Wildernesses, other than the fact that the 24s and the 25s do have the Harman Kardon speakers. There's a lot of variety of materials. Typical Subaru, they can't really decide what texture they want to go with uniformly, but they're all soft touch, they're easy to clean, and mine has held up exceptionally well. Otherwise, you have the large Subaru on the door sill. You have rubberized mats that have kind of a nice wilderness tread pattern. Rubberized pedals, which my 2022 has aluminum pedal inserts anyways. Hood release, fuse box, that's where I have my my activation switch for both the white and the amber lights on my LED bar. Here's your extra options. You have ventilation, the lighting stock, the trip reset, your StarTech seats, which are comfortable, and they've held up really well on my own Outback, and then a tinted power moonroof up top. Sitting inside here, there's also a lot to talk about. Visibility is good. You can obviously see that the hood slopes down. You can see the basic heads-up display, which just flashes different lights at you to let you know what's going on with your adaptive cruise control settings and safety settings. You have blind spot monitoring on this side. It's nice and easy to find a comfortable position. The steering wheel telescopes and goes up and down. It tilts, telescopes, it does all the fancy things. The horn, high-pitched, loud, Subaru horn. Nothing really special. You do have paddle shifters on the back for the 8 simulated gears. When you fired right up with the push button start, the needles dance. The steering responsive headlights turn. If we had like a wall and it was at night, we could see the little theatrical display it does. But overall, it's nice. It idles at, well under 1,000 RPM once it's warmed up. You have the info button right here to go through the center display. There's a few good options there. And then you have the 11.6-inch screen. It's not the most responsive, it's not the fanciest. I do always turn off auto start stop just because I don't like that feature personally. You have heated seats that are controlled through here, and the best part is you have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay and a front-facing camera on this Wilderness. Clarity, quality, not fantastic. What about the rear? About the same. It does the job. I'm glad it's there, but the clarity, for a couple dollars more by Subaru or even on the MSRP, it could have been a better camera. Otherwise, you have an electronic parking brake, no wireless charger, which I personally removed mine and I put this back in because I found this more useful because the wireless charger just didn't work on my phone. And then you have some plugins. There's the front-facing camera view. You have cup holders and a 2-stage center armrest. You can see the 2 buttons right there, which is pretty cool. Ooh. Why doesn't it always want to work when these are brand new? There we go. Finally it worked. Yep, there we go. Now it's consistently working. Otherwise, you have the rear view mirror, you have the compass, you have the garage door openers, the auto dimming mirrors, which also work on the side. Fantastic feature if you can spare the extra couple $100. You have a sunglass holder. You obviously have the power moonroof and the controls right there to tilt or to slide it. You should have LED lighting. Yep. And then these slide, unlike the Forester and the Crosstrek. And this has incandescent lighting, so I'm sure there's a lighting option that you could upgrade that with. But anyways, let's turn it off and let's hop in the back. The back of the Outback seriously shines. The door panel, it's the same. There's a bunch of different materials, not too much to talk about down here. Bottle and snack pocket. A little bit of grip in case you have to step right there to get up to your roof rails. But this is the back seat. It's a 40-60 split bench. This is the 40. I have it reclined currently, and I have the 60 as upright as it can get. So you can see there's quite a bit of reclination that you can do. But when you have to drop it, it's easy. It's lightweight. It doesn't really take a whole lot, and there's even a latch in the back to drop the seats forward. But at 5'11", sitting behind a very relaxed driver position, I still have a ton of room in front of my knees. I have the double map pockets and the pamphlets, ventilation to keep me cool or warm in the winter, heated seats to keep me warm anytime I want, some plugins back here, and you have an armrest that has 2 cup holders. Otherwise, back here, visibility is still really good. You can see a lot, and it's just a really nice, comfortable place to be. And with that said, let's hop out and I'll show you the hatch. I think the back of the Wilderness looks really good. You can see this one also has the optional hitch from the factory, but there's a few different ways to access the hatch. You can either push the button that's on the dashboard, you can climb through the back seats, you can push the button that's underneath the Subaru emblem, you could use the remote. I'm gonna use the remote today. You'll also notice when it lifts that there's a pin code button right here. I have a video on how to set that. It basically lets you get into your vehicle without having the keys within proximity to it, which is a pretty cool feature. Otherwise, you have 33 cubic feet of room back here. These are the handles I was talking about. You can drop the seats with them. And then you have about 75 cubic feet when they're both laying flat, which means there's enough room to car camp back here if that's what you're into. Otherwise, you have some bag clips. You have some other tie downs down there. Harman Kardon speaker if you don't have that option. This is just more storage. Back here, more storage with a mesh pocket, and then you have a full-size spare tire under here with your eye bolt in case you have to be towed or anything briefly, your scissor jack and all the tools, and enough storage to hide a little bit more stuff. And you can even put the privacy shade down there in those grooves and it runs along the length of the tire. You can see the groove right there. And with that said, let's drop the hatch and let's move on with this review. Today, my backpack is the lucky duck that gets to ride shotgun in there. But first, you'll notice the door panel is identical to the driver's side, minus the control switch right there, the control panel. Subaru on the door sill. It is a power seat, but you do lose 2 of the power controls that the driver has. It's comfortable. Nice bolstering, very soft and squishy, and you can easily clean StarTex with a warm, wet rag. Otherwise, you have storage on the transmission tunnel, storage above the glove box. It is locking with the key that's hidden in your Subaru remote, and you even have a 12 volt in here. Not a ton of extra storage. It's good enough. You could hide a few things in here, but that's not where the storage primarily is in the Outback. Otherwise, and I'll come around to the front and I'll show you what the FA24 DIT turbo engine and everything else under the hood looks like. Under the hood, you do have a 2.4 liter turbo boxer engine. The turbo is actually a Garrett name brand turbo, which is pretty cool. It's located on the front of the engine at the very bottom, and you have to take off the skid plate to really get a good look at it. But you'll notice because there's no external hood scoop on this turbo Subaru, it's an internal hood scoop to get some cool air to cool down the intercooler to ultimately cool down the air. So you have induction through the grill for that, but also for the air filter in the box. Then it disappears, goes through the turbo, comes back up around, gets cooled down, goes through the throttle body, and then goes to each side of the horizontally opposed boxer. You can even see where the block is split right there where it's bolted together, which is pretty cool. Otherwise, it's a very mechanical engine. There's not a ton of excessive electronics and nonsense under the hood. You have the fuse boxes on the periphery, you have your brake fluid, your windshield washer, your coolant, your engine oil filter and fill, the alternator, the serpentine belt, where you check the oil, the dipstick, the battery. Basically, all of your regular maintenance items are easy to get to because it's such a mechanical engine that almost everything other than changing out the spark plugs is actually pretty easy to do, and it's pretty easy to identify what's going on with your Subaru Boxer. It does make about 260 peak horse at around 5,600 RPM and 277 foot-pound-feet of torque as low as 2,000 RPM. So at 2,000 RPM, this turbo Subaru makes over twice as much torque as the non-turbo version at the same RPM. So this feels punchy, it feels fast around town, and with that said, let's take it for a drive. Initial driving impressions of the 2025 Subaru Outback Wilderness is, to be honest, if I wasn't looking at the paint color on the hood, maybe listening to the speakers where these are Harman Kardons, and didn't notice the heated steering wheel button that this now has as of last year, I would just think I'm riding in my own Outback. But I've put about 40,000 miles on my own Outback. And does this feel much different? I mean, it still has the same Gen 3 eyesight system. It still has basically all the same safety features with how mine was loaded out when I bought it almost 3 years ago. And the interior of this one, sure, it's a little bit nicer. Sure, it has the brand new Subaru smell. But honestly, mine has held up really well, all things considered. So driving this, I feel like I'm right at home. I feel like I set up really high and a little bit higher than I do in the Subaru Forester that we just bought, which it could just be seat position, but I know in general the Forester feels higher than the regular Outback, which I drove one of those just a few days ago. But driving the Wilderness, this again feels a little bit bigger, and because it's heavier, because it's almost 4,000 pounds and has a full 9-foot wheelbase, it just feels a little bit more planted and solid on the road. The brakes work really well, and the pedal feels linear after the first maybe half centimeter of nothing really, just so that you don't accidentally start pushing on it and it screeches to a halt. I'm sure it's just, you know, how it's tuned to feel more natural, and it does. Or if you have to get up to speed, it takes but just a moment for the turbo to spool and the CVT to get you into the right gear ratio that you need to be, and I'm already going up to 60 miles an hour basically. This is a really fun package. It's a really good vehicle, and there's a reason why this is the vehicle that I have had chronologically longer than anything else. I haven't put as many miles on this as I did my last Tacoma. I put over 60,000 miles on one of those in 2 years, but having owned my Outback for almost 3 years, it's still the best vehicle, the best daily driver that I have ever owned. Just riding around in this one reminds me of all the things that I fell in love with when I first got into the one that I ended up buying. You can fit full-size adults in the back seat. You can go through the country, through some dirt, gravel roads, whatever you need to do in the Outback Wilderness. 9.5 inches of ground clearance is going to get you there. And with that said, if you guys want a longer driving impressions video, I will post one of those within the next few weeks of this vehicle. Otherwise, let's get to the 0 to 60 and then my final thoughts. 0 to 60 in the Outback Wilderness, traction control's off, I'll brake rev it, but keep in mind density altitude's over 5,500 feet today, so we're over a mile above sea level, air quality equivalent, and even though it's turboed, it's still probably down on power about 10%. Let's see what it can do. Pulls really hard at 4,000 RPM. And true 0 to 60 came in at 7.11 seconds, so given the fact that our air quality is not very good today, a low 7-second true time or a high 6-second time without rollout, how this would have been rated, it's really not that bad. If we didn't do the brake rev, it probably would have been about 0.3 of a second slower, is my best guess. My final thoughts of the 2025 Subaru Outback Wilderness is honestly, feels very similar to my 2022. Maybe it feels a little bit more fresh, but ultimately it feels like the exact same driving experience, and I'm glad that this exists. I'm glad that Subaru is giving us an off-road version of the off-road wagon and calling it the Wilderness. How cool is that? But like I always recommend, guys, just because I own one, just because I have been converted from Toyota trucks to Subarus, doesn't mean that this is right for you. So check out the competition. Check out all the other makes and models that compete against this or any other comparisons, how strange they may be. I'm not going to judge you. Just drive everything that you might be interested in before you spend over $40,000 on a vehicle. Is it worth $40,000? I mean, in my opinion, it is. I own one of these, and I'm currently planning to keep it until the powertrain warranty ends, which at this rate will be about the 5-year mark. So with that said, if you guys got anything out of this video, please consider liking this video. Comment your thoughts and opinions. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hope to see you again, and if you want this one or one like it at a good deal, check out the Twin Falls Subaru. Until next time, I wish you guys the best. I hope you take care. See ya.